full class because my knee's really hurting and my throat's really hurting. This is just not my semester. So we're going to pick up around 170, but I want to go back to something. I'm pretty sure it was in the lecture, in one of the lectures that I sent a video to, back in the chapter, A Peck of Owls, chapter 2. At the end of the page, the arrival of the Dementors and Little Weenie seemed to have caused a breach in the great invisible wall that divided the relentlessly non-magical world of Privet Drive and the world beyond. Harry's two lives had somehow become fused, and everything had been turned upside down. The Dursleys were asking details about the magical world, and Mrs. Figg knew all the Dumbledore Dementors were soaring around Little Weenie, and he might never get back to Hogwarts. Okay. What are we being shown in that scene? Let me rephrase that. What we are being shown in that scene, back in that chapter, is the bridging together, or another way to put it, the revelation that Harry's two aspects of reality, the aspect that he discovers on the stroke of midnight on his birthday when he turns 11, and the reality that he's known up until that point are two halves of the same reality. I mean, they're the same. He's just never experienced it before. He's never seen it before. And even when he goes off to school, book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, for him, it's a kind of a bifurcated reality. Hogwarts is Hogwarts. Number 4 Privet Drive is number 4 Privet Drive, and never the twain shall meet, all right? And in book 5, in that second chapter, they not only meet, the distinction becomes totally blurred. And notice where it occurs. It occurs in Aunt Petunia's, as it's described, kind of surgically clean kitchen with high-end appliances, the whole 9 yards. And it comes because of the Dementors and Harry having to practice magic, and he gets the letter, you're going to be expelled from school, all that kind of stuff. Don't worry, Dumbledore's working on it, okay? And what blows his mind is when he explains, Voldemort's back, and he mentions Dementors, and Aunt Petunia, just out of nowhere, says they're the ones who guard the wizard prison. And he's like, what? And Vernon is, what? Okay? And that's where we get, additional revelation about what Aunt Petunia knows. Books 2, 3, and 4, do we get any indication that Aunt Petunia knows anything about the wizarding world? No. Book 1 and book 5, we do. How do we know from book 1? Go back for a minute to when Harry discovers, Hagrid tells him he's a wizard. Yeah. Vernon's the one who kind of gets all the camera time, so to speak. I don't mean the films. I mean, if you were to think of this visually. Vernon gets, it's Petunia who does what? She goes ape, berserk. I mean, she just, this torrent of anger and jealousy and frustration comes out, okay? So, she gets the howler, remember my last, Petunia, and she puts her foot down. The boy stays, okay? Now, jump up to where we are here. This is chapter 9, The Woes of Mrs. Weasley. Harry's been taken off to number 4. Where is the Order of the Phoenix? Headquarters? Yep, just 1 minute. Say this again. Grimmauld, or like Diagon Alley, but that one we jump together, cram together, so it becomes diagonally. This one if you take them apart, this is Scottish word for old. Old Lang Syne, okay, is grim old place. Describes Sirius's house. I mean, it's a grim when you walk in and there's those, heads of house elves along the wall. Old Betty, Mrs. Black, in the painting, screaming at everybody, right? So, they're there, Harry gets reunited with Ron and Hermione. He goes all crazy and all that kind of stuff. And they're having a get-together. This is in the chapter, The Woes of Mrs. Weasley. After the hearing, and just one thing, page 154. I know I talked about it, but I'm just going to take a couple minutes. Harry and Mr. Weasley are leaving the hearing, and they run into Fudge and Lucius Malfoy. Well. Top of 154. Patronus Potter. Okay. Go back, first book, Dumbledore and McGonagall at number 4 Privet Drive. Hagrid delivers Harry. Dumbledore leaves Harry on the doorstep with a letter. And McGonagall argues against doing that because she says, what will Harry be? Everybody's going to know about him, right? He's going to be in every magical book there is. And she says, in fact, I wouldn't even be surprised if this day is called, anybody remember? Harry Potter Day. What day is that? That Harry is delivered to the Dursleys. The date, let me put it that way. Not the year, just the month and day. It's November 1st. It's the morning after Lily and James got killed. What's November 1st? Okay. What's October 31st? Halloween. What's the real name? All Hallows Eve. It's the eve of All Hallows Day. What's All Hallows Day? Hallows there means Saints Day. It's All Saints Day. Okay? She says, wouldn't be at all surprised if this day is called Harry Potter Day, or is remembered in commemoration of Harry in the future. He's just called Harry Patronus Potter. Patronus, patron, like patron saint, Saint Potter. All Hallows Day, 7th book. The Deathly Hallows. The deathly sainted ones, the deathly sanctified or sanctifying ones is kind of what that phrase means. The deathly holy ones. Okay? So, Malfoy goes on and talks about how, Harry wriggled out of that one, snake-like, in fact, etc., etc. And Arthur Weasley, and what are you doing here, Arthur? I work here. Not here. In other words, you do something with, magical muggle stuff. So, they go back to the Weasleys, to number 12, to the headquarters. They're going to have a party in Harry's honor, okay? And Mrs. Weasley, page 168, tells Mad Eye, there's a boggart. Drawing room. He looks up through all the floors. Yep, see it? Want me to take care of it? She goes, no, I'll do it myself later. Okay. So, 172, 173. Mad Eye's there, the real Mad Eye this time, not the crazy Barty Crouch Jr. Mad Eye, who's now a vegetable somewhere. And Mad Eye thinks, well, this would be the perfect opportunity to show Harry some old pictures. Now that we've got the gang back together, the Order of the Phoenix, he says, come here, Harry. Original Order of the Phoenix. Found it last night when I was looking for my spare invisibility cloak. Okay. Spare implies what? He's got more than one. Okay. Harry takes the photograph. Moody, there's me. So, we're going to write all these names down. He says, there's me, pointing at himself. So, original order. Original Order of the Phoenix. So we see Moody. Okay. There's Dumbledore. Brian, Percival, Wulfric. Kind of distinguish them. Dumbledore. There's Daedalus Diggle. Marlene McKinnon. Frank Longbottom, Alice Longbottom, okay. He goes on, top of the next page. There's Emily Vance, Lupin, Benji Fenwick, let's see, Edgar Bones, name we've heard, last name we've heard already, Sturgis Podmore, name we're going to hear shortly, Caradoc Dearburn, Hagrid, Alpheus Doge, a name we've heard and we're going to hear a lot of later, Gideon Pruitt, he and his brother Fabian Pruitt. I don't think Fabian's actually mentioned. He refers to him, so I'm going to put him down. He's in it, but he's not in the picture necessarily. Well, let's see. There's Aberforth, Dumbledore, Dorcas Meadows, and Sirius Black. Okay, so those are the people in the picture. Notice who's not there. Weasleys. None of the Weasleys were in the original order. Okay. Harry's parents there. Did I write them down? Where are Harry's parents?
Oh, Harry Martin and his mother and father were beaming at him.
Wait, where?
174.
Which page?
174. The paragraph after Mad Eye stops talking. He doesn't say William James Potter are there, but it says it. He doesn't say him by name, but Harry sees his mother and father in the picture.
Okay.
Near Wormtail.
James Potter, Lily Potter, and Peter Pettigrew. Okay, so now go back. And what are we told? So there's Dumbledore beside me. Get the red marker. Daedalus Diggle on the other side. That's Marlene McKinnon. She was killed 2 weeks, he says, after this was taken. They got her whole family. That's Frank and Alice Longbottom. They're not dead. But might as well be, right? Frank and Alice Longbottom. Emmeline Vance, you met her. There's Lupin. Benji Fenwick, he says. He copped it too, only ever found bits of him. Edgar Bones, I got him. He was a great wizard. Sturgis Podmore. Caradoc Dearburn, vanished 6 months afterwards. Found his body. Matthias Doge, Gideon Pruitt, took 5 Death Eaters to kill him and his brother Fabian. Aberforth, Dorcas Meadows, Voldemort killed her personally. All right. There's Sirius, James, Lily, both also killed by Voldemort. So, take that tally. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 people in the original Order of the Phoenix. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to include these two. 9, 10, 11 dead. What's that telling us? You join the Order of the Phoenix, and what's likely to happen? Odds are 50-50 you're not coming out. Odds are 50-50 you're going to die being in that. For one of the members of that group. Or at the very least, you're going to get tortured into insanity. All right? He was spared the trouble of inventing an object he had not packed. Sirius had just said, when he got there, Mad-Eye, Moody turned towards him. Harry crossed the kitchen, slipped through the door, and up the stairs. He did not know why he'd received such a shock. He'd seen his parents' picture before, after all, and he'd met Wormtail. But to have them sprung up on him like that, and then to see them surrounded by all those other happy faces. Benji Fenwick, who'd been found in bed. Gideon Pruitt died like a hero. The Longbottoms. Okay? Who, by the way, are Gideon and Fabian Pruitt? Anybody know? They're Molly's brothers. Harry gets a watch. Final book, 17th birthday. It had belonged to her brother. Okay? Which we're told. So, Harry goes upstairs, and he sees Mrs. Weasley. Someone was cowering, page 175, against the dark wall, her wand in her hand, her whole body shaking with thought, sprawled on the dusty old carpet in patch of moonlight, clearly dead, was Ron. All the air seemed to vanish from Harry's lungs. Interesting, I never made the connection to just now. Is this kind of the fulfillment in Harry, let's say, of what would have happened, second task, previous book? Ron was where? He's being held by the mer people. Okay? Harry's underwater. If he drowns, all the air is gone. He essentially asphyxiates. Interesting little writing detail she throws in there. And Harry's like, wait, that can't be. Ron's downstairs. Mrs. Weasley, ridiculous. Ron's body turns into Bill's. Mr. Weasley replaces Bill's. No! Ridiculous. Crack. Dead twins, Fred and George. Dead Percy. Dead Harry. Oh, it's not just the Weasley family. Though, this is telling us, in Molly's mind, Harry's one of the kids. Okay? Mrs. Weasley, get out of here. Lupin comes up. Sirius comes up. Page 177. Harry, I'm so sorry. What must you think of me? Not even able to get rid of a boggart. Don't be stupid. I'm just so worried. Half the family's in the order. Molly, Arthur, Bill, Charlie. Who's next? Fred and George?
Yeah, not first.
Because not Percy. And we get I kind of like to think of it as prophecy. We get the fulfillment of the foreshadowing. Book 2, when they're in Flourishing Blots, and Ron makes the comment about Percy being like who? Not Flourishing Blots, later on. Being like Tom Riddle. Prefect, head boy. Because what book was Percy reading? Prefects Who Got Power. Okay? That's what he was reading in one of the bookstores. Okay? It'll be a miracle if we all come through this. And Percy's not talking to us. Rowling giving us some foreshadowing what might happen to Percy. What if something dreadful happens we never made up? What's going to happen if Arthur and I get killed? Who's going to look after Ron and Jenny? Lupin's like, Molly, that's enough. It's not like last time. The Order are better prepared. We've got a head start. We know what Voldemort's up to. Right? Harry's scar bursts into pain, beginning of the next page. Chapter 10, Luna Lovegood. Harry has a dream. In that dream, right, there's creatures, dead body, watched by Ron and Hermione, who were wearing crowns. Yet again, Harry found himself walking down a corridor, ending in a locked door, etc. So, we get on the train, and we get introduced to Luna Lovegood, see Cho again, and Luna's reading the Quibbler, and we get examples of the articles from the Quibbler. What is the Quibbler in our world? What's an example of the Quibbler? A real world example. National Enquirer, pretty much, and you go to Kroger or Publix, the Sun. But National Enquirer even more, because the Sun doesn't have things on the cover like, a grainy image of a rock formation on Mars that says, Jesus found alive, like you get in the National Enquirer, or Elvis, alive, or something like that. Let's see, we're going to skip the rest of that. What else happens in the chapter Luna Lovegood? They're in their compartment. Neville's there. Now, forget that. Let's go on to the Sorting Hat's new song. Because like I said, we're probably going to end early, and this will probably end up taking a long time. I know we don't have the time to do that because we've got to finish this when? 28. Finish this. You're kidding. We have 3 days. No, because we've already done it. 4th. Yeah, we might be able to. So, they go up to Great Hall, and the Sorting Hat sings a new song. In times of old, when I was new and Hogwarts barely started, the founders of our noble school thought never to be parted. So, think of words, or pay attention to words of division or disunity. Parted. And then think of words of unity or harmony. Okay? So, thought never to be parted, united by a common goal. They had the self-same. We're not going to write every one of these, but you're going to get the idea. Self-same yearning to make the world's best magic school and pass along their learning. Together, we will build and teach. The 4 good friends decided, and never did they dream, that they might someday be divided. For were there such friends anywhere? And then she throws this twist. As Slytherin and Gryffindor. Now, how well do Slytherins and Gryffindors get along? Present tense. Oil and water. They do not mix. And yet you find out at the beginning, at the founding, those two were best friends. Unless it was the second pair of Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw. So how could it have gone so wrong? How could such friendships fail? Why, I was there and so can tell the whole said sorry tale. Said Slytherin will teach just those whose ancestry is purest, purebloods. Notice, just those. What's the just there mean? Only. Nobody else. Okay? What's he mean by we'll? We Hogwarts or we Slytherins? It's not clear yet. Said Ravenclaw, we'll teach those whose intelligence is surest. There's no qualifier. There's no limiter. She doesn't say we'll teach only those or just those. Okay? Gryffindor. So, pure blood, pure intellect if you want, said Gryffindor, we'll teach all those with brave deeds to their name. Notice the difference between all and only. All encompasses everyone, but it's still limited. By what? Brave deeds. Right? Then look what Hufflepuff says. Said Hufflepuff, I'll teach the lot. The three previous founders, we, and it's kind of the royal we. I don't think that means we collectively together. It means we Gryffindors, said Hufflepuff, I'll teach the lot. What's meant by the lot? Everyone. Pure bloods, great intellect, brave, and those who aren't pure blood or with a great intellect or brave. Okay? I'll teach the lot and treat them just the same. Notice just there does not have the same meaning as it had with Slytherin. Just there means what? Entirely, completely, totally. I'll teach all of them and do what? Treat them all the same. Why is that significant? What is Hufflepuff not drawing about the students? I'm trying to think of how to say this without using one of these kinds of words. What is she suggesting? Notice what each of the other three founders does. I want to use your first word. They're discriminating. We think of that word discrimination as being bad words. They're not. To say this is not this is to discriminate. It is drawing the distinctions between this thing and this thing. There's nothing bad about that, right? Because this is a marker and this is a phone. They are not the same. They will never be the same. Now I'm going to discriminate between this and this. I'm pointing out the differences. That's all discriminate means. Okay? Discrimination is turning that verb into a noun. Okay? And it can be used, obviously, negatively. If one practices discrimination on the basis of religion, ideology, sex, ethnic origins, whatever, race, yeah, that's bad, okay? Notice what Hufflepuff isn't doing. She's not doing this. She's doing this. Each of the other three founders, they're doing this. I'm only going to teach the brave ones. I'm only going to teach the smart ones. All you dumb ones go over there. All you cowards go over there. I'm only going to teach the purebloods. All you mudbloods go over there. Okay? Or all you mixed bloods, go over there. And she says what? I'll take them all. Bring them all to me. Okay? And she says, I, in distinction, in contradiction to their we. They're kind of saying, we, both the royal we, like when the queen says, we are not amused, okay? We collectively will do this, or we individually. But they also kind of mean the other three founders, we as founders are going to do this. That is, we kind of agree. The smart ones go to Ravenclaws, the brave ones go to Gryffindors, purebloods go to Slytherins. And Hufflepuff is kind of dividing that by saying, no, I'll teach them all. And treat them just the same. I'm not going to treat the smart ones differently from the dumb ones. The brave ones differently from the cowards. The purebloods differently from the mixed bloods. These differences caused little strife when first they came to light. For each of the four founders had a house in which they might take only those they wanted. Okay, now think about that. If they only took those they wanted, and then we get a long passage that describes that, what does that mean? So Slytherin gets all the purebloods. That means there aren't purebloods in the other houses, supposedly. It's false, right? Because the Weasleys are in Gryffindor, and they're purebloods. Okay? Neville's a pureblood. He's in Gryffindor. Okay? Only the brave, supposedly. Is it really only purebloods are in Slytherin? Or does the sorting hat go, does a DNA analysis, you've got 50.1% pure wizard blood, you come here and higher, It's something like that, right? So, each of the four founders had a house in which they might take only those they wanted. Okay? Only those they wanted. So, if you weren't selected for Gryffindor, that means Gryffindor doesn't want you. If you weren't selected by Ravenclaw, Ravenclaw doesn't want you. Slytherin doesn't choose you, Slytherin doesn't want you. It's not the same for Hufflepuff. So Slytherin took only pureblood wizards of great cunning, just like him. Notice. Pureblood, great cunning. Only those of sharpest mind were taught by Ravenclaw, while the bravest and the boldest, notice Ravenclaw is still only, you got to be brilliant to be in Ravenclaw. Okay? Gryffindor, we now get two adjectives to describe, the bravest and the boldest. Went to daring Gryffindor. Good Hufflepuff. Okay? She took the rest. Notice, Hufflepuff comes seemingly at the end of the pecking order, and she doesn't say, well, I'm going to take only. It's like Hufflepuff says, no, you guys go first. You choose first. And then what does Hufflepuff say? Come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden. Come to me, and I'll take you all. It's like, I don't know what it was like when you guys were in grade school, elementary school. But it's like, elementary school PE. And it's time to form up teams. And, you line up, two people are made captains, and they get to start choosing their teams. Who gets chosen first? The most athletic, the best player. Who gets chosen last? The most unathletic, the worst player. Okay? Like when there were basketball teams, because I wasn't very tall, I wasn't chosen first. Or middle, I was usually towards the end. I was very athletic, but that hoop was way up there. All right? Hufflepuff gets what? Use language that Dobby uses when he first meets Harry in Harry's bedroom in Chamber of Secrets. We dregs, we lowlifes of magical society. Those are the ones Hufflepuff gets. Okay? At the founding, at the beginning. So, and notice the appellation that Hufflepuff gets. Good Hufflepuff. Okay? The hat ascribes Helga Hufflepuff, as being good. Gryffindor's daring. Daring can be good or bad, right? You can be boldly, badly daring. Pull off a daring bank heist. Kind of a thing. So, thus the houses and their founders retained friendships firm and true. So Hogwarts worked in harmony for several happy years. How old is Hogwarts? We're told in the second book it's over 1,000 years old. So it worked in harmony for several years to find several. You've got one, you've got two or a couple, you've got a few, 3, maybe 4. We did this with the bottles of wine, and several. 5 to 20. Notice, it didn't happen for decades. It wasn't for centuries. So out of its 1,000-year history, I think it's safe to say it's less than a tenth of that. I would say it's much less than a tenth of that. Hogwarts worked in harmony, unity. But then discord crept among us. Notice, it's that and not that. Chord, like a musical chord, it's discord. What's the root of that? It's Latin, card, cardiac, okay? Disheart, bad heart, okay? Crept among us, feeding on our faults and fears. What's meant by faults? It can have multiple meanings. What are some of the meanings of the word fault? Like, it's my fault. It's my problem. It's my error. It's my mistake. It's my moral failing. Okay, that's one meaning. Any of you from California? I was born and raised in California. California is riddled by tectonic faults, like earthquake faults. What are they? They're cracks in the ground that you don't know that they're there until the earth goes rip, or rip. Either a slip fault or a thrust fault. And then you're very well aware that you are living in earthquake activity, okay? The faults are the little cracks. Okay? So what kind of cracks are there? I'm going to take only these. I'm going to take only these. I'm going to take only these. They're the marks of separation. Marks of discrimination between them. The houses that, like Pillars 4, had once held up our school, now turned upon each other and divided, sought to rule. Gryffindor said, I want control. I want power. Slytherin said the same. I think it's implied Ravenclaw said the same. I don't think it's implied that Hufflepuff did. And for a while, it seemed the school must meet an early end, what with dueling and with fighting and the clash of friend on friend. And at last there came a morning when old Slytherin departed. And though the fighting then died out, he left us quite downhearted. Okay, so let's erase these. Put up another image. And this is where I think Rowling, this is an example of her brilliance. Of her brilliance as a wordsmith. Okay? Why? She says, when Slytherin left, it left us, Hogwarts, downhearted. Well, Heart is what? Obviously not like this, but it has what? A heart has 4 chambers. Yeah, just like, so one leaves, and what happens? You go into cardiac arrest. That's the downhearted. When Slytherin left, it's like the heart stopped beating. So put that back in for a moment. Left us quite downhearted, and never since the Founders 4 were whittled down to 3 have the houses been united as they were once meant to be. In other words, from the time Slytherin left, Hogwarts hasn't functioned as it should have functioned, as it was meant to function. So what? How do you fix that? What needs to happen between the other 3 houses and Slytherin? They have to reach some kind of agreed settlement. Slytherin needs to be welcomed back, so to speak. Okay? And now the sorting hat is here, and you all know the score. What's meant by score? What is this? It's the sorting hat's new song. You know the song. You know the drill. I sort you into houses. That's the score. That's why I exist. Because that is what I'm for. Who did the hat belong to? Gryffindor. Gryffindor, we're told, first sorting hat song. I think it's the first sorting hat song. Whip the sorting hat off his head, and they each put some of their brains inside it. How do you do that? Pensive. Take those thoughts, the sorting thoughts, put them in, mix them up. Okay? Which is why there's going to be a problem in book 7 when we start to talking about Horcruxes and relics and such. The sorting hat is totally skipped as being a relic of the founders. Sorting hat is here. You all know the score. I sort you into houses because that is what I'm for. That is my purpose. But this year, I'll go further. That is, I'm going to do more than sort. Listen closely to my song. That is, listen up, children. Though condemned, I am to split you. Still, I worry that it's wrong. What does the sorting hat mean by splitting the students? When first years arrive, what are they? They're sorted into houses. What are they before they're sorted? They're just first years, right? When you're on the boat going across the lake, you're not Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Slytherin, Ravenclaw. You're just a first year, okay? So, what's the sorting hat have to do? It sorts them into houses, right? Though condemned, I am to split you. When they arrive, they're all Hogwarts first years. They're all united in that. And then it says, you belong over here, you belong over here, and it starts splitting them. How does it do that? Go back to Harry's sorting. Whew, you're difficult. Talent? Oh my, yes. And a thirst to prove yourself. Now that's interesting. Where should I put you? Not a bad mind. Where should I put you? Slytherin, you could be great. It could help you to greatness. Not Slytherin, not Slytherin. Not Slytherin? Gryffindor then. Notice, not Slytherin, it doesn't automatically default to Ravenclaw. Why? Here's a 60-watt bulb in a 100-watt, box kind of a thing. So why? Because Gryffindor or Slytherin and Slytherin are the most alike. And Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw are the most alike, okay, in terms of the 4 groupings. So what does the sorting hat do? It looks into somebody's personality, it looks into somebody's mind, into their soul, so to speak, and says, you know, he's got ambition, yeah, okay. Daring, yeah, he's got some of that. Not a bad mind, that's the Ravenclaw testing. Okay. Notice, are we told that Harry is hardworking, loyal, just, true, faithful? No, we're not told he's any of those qualities. Right? Bold, daring, chivalry, yeah. And then we see him act all that out. What the sorting has to do is it has to look at somebody and split that individual on the basis of what are the predominant qualities. If you've read these novels before, think Horcruxing. It's very similar. Still, I worry that it's wrong. Though I must fulfill my duty and must quarter every year. See, it's got to divide that first year's class into quarters, even quarters, so that each house has an even new number. But it must do what? It must quarter, like drawing and quartering, it must quarter each individual to see what are the predominant qualities that determine that student takes place there. Now, what are we going to find? What will we find out later on, for example, about Hermione? Not in this book, later on. Sorting Hat wanted to put her where? She's a Ravenclaw. She's the living embodiment of a Ravenclaw. So why is she put here? Is it because of her daring? Is it because of her courage, her bravery, her chivalry? Because that's what we're told Gryffindors are. They're chivalrous. That's why Harry's there, by the way. What is chivalry? What's at the heart of chivalry? Well, the chivalric code was called the code of King Arthur, so to speak. It was the Pentecost Oath, and it was an oath Arthurian knights retook every year at the Feast of Pentecost. And it was essentially based upon what Christ says in Matthew chapter 25 about the parable of the Last Judgment. You know, the sheep and the goats, the sheep go off to the right side, the goats go off to the left side. Well, what's he saying in that parable? He talks about people feeding the poor, clothing the naked, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, aiding the poor, visiting widows, helping widows, visiting those in prison. And people are going to say, Lord, when did I blah, blah, blah? Inasmuch as you did it to one of the least of these, you did it to me. So you gave somebody a cup of cold water, you go off to the right side. If you didn't do any of that, you go off to as you become a goat kind of thing. Well, that oath was based upon that essentially. And you can boil it down to helping those who are in need. Okay? Without expecting anything in return. Should throw that in. So, damsels in distress, killing dragons that are terrorizing mountainside, things like that. All right? That's the essence of chivalry. So, still I wonder whether sorting may not bring the end I fear. What's the end? End of Hogwarts? Total division. Book 7. Well, books 5, 6, and 7, to some extent. Horcruxing idea again. Know the perils, read the signs. What did Sirius tell Harry, book 4, Dumbledore's been doing? Reading the signs. It's why he got Mad-Eye out of retirement. When are we first referred to those signs? Bane, Firenze, have you seen anything odd in the forest? Hagrid asks in the first book. Oh, Mars is bright tonight. Yeah, but you've seen, there's unicorn bladder. Mars. Yeah, I mean a little closer down here to Earth. What are they saying? Mars, the bringer of war, is growing brighter and brighter and brighter. Okay? War's about to come. How did the fourth book end? A new beginning. It's not a new beginning. It's a brightful, joyful day, little orphan Annie. No, it's the new war. Okay? So when this book opens, what does Harry expect to see happening? Why is he trying to read all the newspapers, watch the news?
See if they report.
What did Dumbledore tell Harry at the end of the chapter, The Pensive? What happened when Voldemort rose to power in the past? Lots of disappearances. Harry's looking for disappearances. There aren't any that are being reported. Okay? So, know the perils, read the signs, the warning history shows. For our Hogwarts is in danger from external deadly foes. And we must unite inside her, or we'll crumble from within. We'll not only be downhearted, the heart will go into full cardiac arrest. I've told you, I have warned you. Okay? Ron, branched out a bit. Okay? Hermione, I wonder if it's given warnings before. Nick, yes, of course. Hat feels itself honor bound. Okay? And so they start talking, and Harry says, page 209, it wants all the houses to be friends. Looking over at the Slytherin table, fat chance. Well, now, you shouldn't take that attitude. Nick says, peaceful cooperation, that's the key. Okay? Skip a bit. Umbridge stands up to give her little speech. Harry just kind of blacks it out. Why? Because what does she sound like? Watch one of the old, Peanuts cartoons specials. One where they have a teacher. Wah, 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 that's all Harry hears. Fortunately, Hermione listens to everything. And she says, I'll tell you what it means, 2:14. It means the ministry's interfering at Hogwarts. She's been appointed by Cornelius Fudge. What did Fudge tell Dumbledore at the end of the previous book? When Dumbledore said, you place too much on love of office and not on what ought to be done. And Fudge says, well, if you're going to oppose me, he says, I'll only oppose you if you support Voldemort. If you don't support Voldemort, then we're on the same sides. Okay? And he says, somebody makes the comment, can't remember who off the top of my head. Somebody makes a comment about, Hogwarts not being under the ministry's control. And Fudge kind of implies, maybe not now. All right? So, let's go on a bit. Sorting Hat's new song towards the end. They go up to their dormitories. Harry has a little, what do you want to call this? A contretemps, a dispute with Seamus Finnegan. Harry said, oh, she thinks I'm a liar. She's been reading the Daily Prophet. So she must think Dumbledore's a liar too. Okay? Neville, page 219. Now Neville's been, at times a thorn in Harry's side, right? Think of the, prisoner of Azkaban. Neville's the one who runs up and down the train telling everybody, Harry Potter fainted. I didn't faint. My grand says that's rubbish. Piped up Neville. She says it's the Daily Prophet that's going downhill, not Dumbledore. She's canceled our subscription. We believe Harry. No, we want to believe Harry. Harry's my friend. My grand's always said, who would come back one day. She says if Dumbledore says he's back, he's back. And Harry's like, way to go, Neville. By the way, here's one thing I will say about the films. Whoever looked at the guy who plays Neville, before the first film was shot, and chose that fat, pudgy little boy, perfect casting, because by the time you get to film 8, and I just saw him, he's in a new British remake of an old series, All Creatures Great and Small. The guy's a looker. There's just no other way to put it. I mean, he's so non-Neville. It'd be nice if Daniel Radcliffe actually grown a little bit more. My daughter and one daughter, maybe both my daughters, and my wife, one time when we were in London, they got to, meet Daniel Radcliffe. And he's, nice, and my daughter's getting squished. And he's like, people, back up, you're going to kill this girl, He's very, very sweet. Okay, so Umbridge. Questions, comments so far? Any place, any spot you have a particular interest in? Okay, go to chapter 12. Because they have a new professor, what does that new professor have to be teaching? Even before you're told. It's got to be defense against the dark arts. Okay? So, they have the first defense against the dark arts class. A return to basic principles. And notice what she does. Have we had this? I'm going to bring it up, but I was going to say I shouldn't bring this up. Notice what she does, top of page 240. I don't remember if I included one in your syllabus or not. I've got a course description. I don't have course objectives or course aims. We're told by the people down in Cope, most of whom have never set foot in a classroom, well, some of them have never set foot in an actual classroom. We're told that you always ought to include course objectives, so that students know what they're going to be expected to have to do and how they will achieve those objectives. It's the idea of outcomes learning-based assessment. We're going to assess how well you learn the material by how you perform on an exam, on a test kind of thing, okay? So here's her course aims. Understanding the principles underlying defensive magic. That means what? In practical day-to-day terms, what is she talking about there? If you're understanding principles, what is it? Theory. So imagine the course is not Defense Against the Dark Arts, how to drive a manual shift automobile. Well, the number one course aim is to understand how a manual shift automobile works, theoretically. You press in the clutch engages with. 2, learning to recognize situations in which defensive magic can legally be used. Theory. 3, placing the use of defensive magic in a context for practical use. Theory. It's all theoretical education. What's the class titled? Defense Against the Dark Arts. The title kind of implies learning how to defend against the dark arts. For her, the learning is what? It's totally theoretical. Okay? So one of the things I try to do in this class is, even though it's fantasy, and what Moody would say, both authors, children's literature of sorts, I try to show how a lot of what these authors are doing, and in my fantasy lit course, the same kind of thing, it's based on real world stuff. It's dealing with real world issues, but they put it in an off world, so to speak, a secondary world, so that it can be more easily and openly discussed. Because, if you just stand up and you talk about, To Kill a Mockingbird, okay, so it's about racism, it's about prejudice, it's pretty clear, but it's also at times difficult to discuss. But in the context of this, it's not as difficult to discuss. When you're talking about bad blood, rotten to the core, all right? That's racism. That's prejudice. Hagrid is a big, fat, prejudiced jerk in that context, all right? He does develop, all right? So, pure theory is what she wants to teach. So, Hermione asks the question about course aims. Where's the practicality? And what does Umbridge finally reply with? 242. Are you a ministry-trained educational expert, Miss Granger? No. Well, then I'm afraid you're not qualified to decide what the whole point of any class is. We'll turn the question around. Is Umbridge a ministry-trained educational expert? No, she's not. She was in the Weisengamat, or the court, the hearing that tried Harry. Was she introduced as a ministry-trained educational expert? No, she wasn't. Okay. So Harry, finally asks a question. In response to her, page 244, who do you imagine wants to attack children like yourselves? Maybe Lord. And I kind of, if you're familiar with the old Saturday Night Live with Dana Carvey, I kind of imagine he uses his, church lady voice. Oh, Lord Voldemort, kind of a thing. And Ron gasps, Lavender Brown, Neville, falls off his chair. Umbridge, however, doesn't flinch. 10 points. Why? Why does she take 10 points from him? It's like he said a dirty word. He said a name. Okay? You've been told certain dark wizard has returned from the dead. He wasn't dead. Yeah, he's returned. You've already lost your house 10 points. Don't make matters worse. This is a lie. Harry, it's not a lie. I saw him. I fought him. Detention. She says this is a lie. Okay? So she gives Harry detention. She takes 10 points off. Do you think those are really effective disciplinary methods? I mean, if she really wants to get Harry, what would work? How about not 10 points? Take 100 points off Gryffindor. What's it going to do to all the other Gryffindors? Think of the divided houses. They're going to turn on Harry. They're not going to have any chance for the house championship. But he gets detention, okay? And he finally tells her to shut up. So he takes the message to McGonagall. She offers him a biscuit, and he's like, what? Page 248. Misbehavior towards the bottom of the page. Misbehavior in Dolores Umbridge's class could cost you much more than house points and detention. What, Potter, use your common sense. You know where she comes from. You must know to whom she's reporting. She's giving you detention. Can't you? No. She's your teacher. She has every right to give you detention. Harry, but I was telling the truth. Right? For heaven's sake, Potter, do you really think this is about truth or lies? That is, Harry, do you really think education is about truth or lies? I mean, Umbridge is implying she's telling the truth. What's it become? Propaganda. Okay? We start to see that idea of propaganda in third book, if not earlier. Okay? With all the stuff we read and hear about Sirius Black. And then she says this, and we're going to stop here, I think. Because my voice is almost gone. It's about keeping your head down and your temper under control. Now, we didn't talk about it in class, but it was in the video. The opening chapter, why does Harry torment Dudley the way he does? They go down, Harry kind of goes down to the little park, Dudley and his gang come, Dudley and his gang leave, Harry comes up behind Dudley, hey big D, and then he just starts ribbing him. And we're told, as he does so, he siphons off his anger onto Dudley. All right? It's almost like Dudley becomes his pensive. It releases Harry of it, but it increases Dudley's. Or, another way of putting it, it's like he's putting a bit of himself into Dudley. The same thing Voldemort did to Harry. All right? But he's doing that why? He's trying to control himself. He's so angry that nobody's telling him anything. Okay? So that one of the controlling ideas or themes of this book becomes, and McGonagall says it right there, control. It's self-control. Okay? Harry, this book, to the end of book 7, Harry has got to learn mastery, self-mastery, self-control. And we're going to hear Snape just beat him on it in the next book. All right? Okay, we'll stop there. I know it's not far enough. And we'll pick up with the tension with Dolores on not very far enough. On Tuesday. And we'll try to finish. Tuesday's when we're supposed to finish this, right? No. Tuesday's 26th. Next week from today is when you finish it. Yeah, we might actually be able to, because there's a lot to skip. This book should easily be 200 pages shorter than what it is.